In this podcast, I'm joined by Mike and JJ Dukart, and we're talking late season strategies. We're talking about food sources that are working right now and how that's going to transition through that late season push. We talk about hunting bucks, managing your population through harvesting some does, and how to support families in need during this time of year.
The Deer Society podcast is brought to you by Illusion Hunting Systems, Onyx Hunt, Reveal Cellular Cameras, 10-Point Crossbows, Prime Archery, Loophole Optics, G5 Broadheads, Osseo Gear, Raw Frozen Scents, and HHA.
Well, Christmas is right around the corner, and we're talking late season deer strategy. Big bucks are obviously doing different things than they were the last few months. So let's jump right into it. Mike, what are the bucks and what are the deer doing right now?
Yeah, it's a behavior thing. We noticed the shift right away. It's like once they started getting, a lot of the does bred, and once the hunting pressure came in, and once the cold snap came in, you could see that there was a change. Okay, so it was a progression. The hunting season comes in, the rut comes in. They're not doing their regular, I'm going to go and check this food plot and kind of that kind of a pattern because they're out chasing the does. And I think JJ might want to comment more on that. But you got that progression, and then now they've wore themselves down. And then we got a really cold snap. In fact, it was quite a bit below wind chills, below zero wind chills. It's actually 5 below outright temperature just about a week or two ago. And it's post-rut. And so the big bucks, let's just think about it like this, okay? I don't want to ramble on too long here because we're going to jump around to each person, but post-rut, they have wore themselves down so badly. And if you think about it from a combination of muscle versus fat, it's going to give you an idea of what their behavior is going to go to, because them bucks have used up so much energy and been so physical, and they're not physical, during the summer and stuff like that. But once they're battling and once they're fighting and they're always rubbing and everything they're doing is a physical strain, not only are they wearing down that fat, but their muscle just completely starts to disappear. Now, I know this from coaching hockey, because once you get mid-season, our kids would always, you could just see they were just losing weight like crazy, and they couldn't keep weight on. And we'd take them and we'd, hey, have a bunch of spaghetti dinner and this and that before games. But really what they needed was a lot of protein, because that's the only thing that's going to rebuild that muscle. So your body, as a deer, think of it as a person, when you need muscle or you've been active, you need that protein. You actually crave that protein. And so I think that's kind of where these deer are now. They've bypassed the carb thing at some level, because early in the season when it starts to get cold and, they change, their fur changes, the corn starts to get good, and your brassicas start to mature out, and they're getting that sweetness and those carbs and all that kind of stuff. It's like comfort food. We talked about this a little bit. In fact, JJ just did a piece on that for Art of Hunting. And they'll crave that body fat so that their body can adjust metabolism-wise. When it gets super cold, their metabolism definitely shuts down. There's no question about it. I've witnessed it. So they're going through that transition now where they really need that protein to build that muscle up. And hopefully they've been good to try and keep enough body fat on them. Now I'm talking about the bucks. The does, they'll fatten up. In fact, I think we've seen that when we were trying to guess how much she weighed, wasn't it? So she must be addicted. She needs Ozempic, I think. But she is one big girl.
But
I think that's what you're thinking about, from a food perspective and a behavior perspective. They're not going to run as much. We can go through a whole bunch of stuff, but I think that's where we are here now. First cold snap. Post-rut up here in Minnesota, behavior-wise, shrinking down, food. I'm going to leave it there, and then we can talk more big picture behavior on our land and what we're doing strategically to set our land up.
JJ, what have you been seeing?
Yeah, so most of my observation, since I haven't been hunting a lot, I'm going to try to get out tonight more for a doe patrol We got a couple weeks left trying to shoot a couple of those, but mostly driving around, seeing deer out in the fields, seeing what the weather's like, whether it's a cold front or a warm up. And it's just kind of interesting. I'll take a couple back roads on the way home and just see what the deer are preferring for food, along with our cameras are out there working, as long as the batteries aren't dying, because this cold weather takes a toll on the cell camera batteries. But we're just watching through the cameras for the most part. We don't have a lot of big target bucks. We have some that, if they made it this far into the season, it's tough to make the decision on shooting a deer that, is this close to making it. So we're kind of weighing that out too. But as far as,
especially when you had let's just say there's 1, 2, 3, 4 that were on the shooter list, and 3 of the 4 are gone. So do you leave the 4th, or that's where we're at? That's
we had an overall good year from a group. If you think about neighbors that participate in the management practice, and them getting deer after having some dry spells where they didn't shoot a big mature buck, passing a lot of middle-aged bucks. So happy to see that success is spread out a little bit. But yeah, when you have 5 deer that are in that mature range, and 4 of them have been shot, 1 by you, some by some neighbors, which again we're super happy for. Do you let the ones that did make it through all that gun hunting pressure get in next year? Not saying they will. Still could be a rough winter. Coyotes, hit by a car, disease, injury, all kinds of different things. But kind of making those decisions now and leaning towards letting them survive and shooting a couple of those. But back to the food. One of the things I'm seeing for sure, and one of the overlooked, I would say an overlooked food source, and you guys can chime in if you want, but I think clover has been overlooked. I think that's something we always think spring, summer, fall. Over the past couple of years, seeing the easy greens out there, deer are still hitting that, especially with no snow on the ground. Last year, they hit it all the way through the winter because we didn't have a harsh winter at all. But once that gets covered real deep in snow, then they kind of shift off that. But there's a good protein level in those clovers, chicory, things like that in that mix. Alfalfa is a similar type of plant that gets a lot of attraction with not a lot of snow on the ground late season. And then soybeans have been huge for every cold front we see. Even this morning, having cameras up on a standing soybean field, protein levels are high. They will clear that field out. As far as eating all of the beans here in the next probably few weeks to a month, I don't think it'll last through the whole winter. Just hard to keep up with soybeans and deer. But yeah, high protein levels there. And then as far as the other food sources go, brassicas and corn, that's more the carbs, but some protein levels in there too. But a lot of different options. It's interesting to see what they prefer with watching, in person, driving around, or just having the camera set up on those food sources. So weighing all of that, it's very interesting, and just definitely something you can capitalize on if you follow those patterns, watch the weather, try to get ahead of it.
Yeah, definitely interesting. Cameras are showing a lot of deer on those clover easy greens plots. I have hunted a few times, actually filmed Allie a few times, and we have seen a ton of deer on the primetime plots. Even when we got some really cold temperatures, expecting deer to start to make that shift to standing corn. We don't have a lot of standing beans around us right now. But, with limited amount of snow, one food plot in particular, it's a primetime plot, and you drive by it and it looks like dirt.
Yeah, to clarify, the primetime is a mix of your brassicas and your clover.
That's
is that correct?
4 seasons. The prime time is just
That's
brassica.
the 4 seasons. Okay,
Yep.
so the prime time is just brassica.
Yep.
Okay.
And when you drive by this thing, and it looks like dirt. They've hammered this plot throughout the year. Very little green left on top of it at all, but those turnips have grown. They're probably about the size of a baseball, maybe a hair smaller. And the deer are just in there heavy. They're pulling those turnips, even, being frozen the other day, just trying to do whatever they can to get them in their mouth, chew on them as much as they can, and even trying to swallow them whole. It's crazy watching that, them trying to eat those turnips the way that they are, but really heavy focus on those turnips right now. Some shift to the standing corn. As you said, I think we'll see that more once we get some snow cover and it covers up where they can't get to those turnips as easily anymore. But yeah, just one of those things where there's a lot of deer activity right now, it seems. We have some really cold snaps, and then we have some warm-ups. Those warm-ups can be really, really good too. But just seeing a lot of deer in congregated areas, especially in those transitional food plots. The nice thing has been as well, we talked about, and you asked me the question the other day, have you been able to get out clean? Access is such a big part of late season hunting, not only getting in, but getting out. And the answer has been yes. The other night we sat and we saw 35 deer on this micro food plot. And at dark, there wasn't one deer in that plot because they had all transitioned out there early. They fed, and then they headed south. They were standing corn to the south side. Imagine that's where they were going. And that was the beauty of it. Like, we got out of there, saw 35 deer on a acre food plot, even maybe a little less, and we're able to get out clean and didn't spook one deer just because it's in that transitional area. So Mike, maybe you can talk about that. It's almost going back to that early season strategy again with these micro plots and transition areas.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we set up when we bought this property, and I think we did a pretty good job of it. What was the series we did when we first bought the property, the land management? What was it called?
Whitetails from scratch.
Whitetails from scratch. And so we kind of went through, the core of how we wanted to set up our land. And we learned this stuff by, working with, it's kind of Andy Orn and, Rod White's strategies from way back in the day. They, did a lot of land management together. And I think Andy still does that, if I'm not mistaken. And so the concept is this: give the deer what they need and don't impede on them so they can't do what they want to do. It's really that simple. So you need to give them that bedding. And so in our case, and there's two types of land. Okay, so you got to set up accordingly. It's no one size fits all. You got your inside outland and you got your outside inland. And we've talked about that in the past. We've never had an inside outland before. We only hunted outside inlands. So if I'm saying this right, so the inside outland means that the deer are on the inside of that property or that land area, and they work their way out of it. Okay. Most likely it's for going to ag fields. I mean, that's pretty much what it is here. Now, it's not that way everywhere. But in the Midwest, in this farm country, this kind of thing, that's what we're dealing with here. And then you have the other land where they're already in there and you're waiting for them to come out to you. Okay. So we've experienced deer behavior in both situations. One's last minute. They're going to come out at the magic hour or they're not. But we really hunt similar on both pieces of property. The difference is our land is set up so the deer want to be there. They have everything they need, and we're not going to do anything to push them out of there. So we just went through this massive gun season that has in Minnesota in the peak of the rut, which is definitely not to the advantage of, preserving large mature bucks. So we can't go in there and blow that piece up. When it comes to gun season, we're doing the opposite. We're hunting less and we're hunting very careful and more perimeter. Earlier in the seasons, we're looking for specific behavior. How are they using the property? Are they using it the way we got it set up? Well, they have been. Okay. So you have your core things, and I can't go on too long here, but you have your bedding or your hinge cut on your inside out property, really going to be. All right. That serves two purposes. One, security, bedding, also for the rut. The does want to go there. They want to hide from being harassed. That's where they do their breeding, that type of thing. So that's going to draw bucks in from everywhere. You're giving them everything they need. You're giving them that thick cover that they need for those different purposes. Then you have your microplots within that system. Okay. Now, by the way, not one human footprint should ever go into that bedding area in our system, in our strategy. That's the way we play it. Okay. The only way that you would ever go in there would be if you have to retrieve a deer. It's the only time you'd ever do that. And that's year round, by the way. Okay. Now you can do some shed hunting. We get in there for shed hunting.
Turkey
That's about
hunting
it.
a little bit.
Yeah, turkey hunting a little bit, but really not much on the turkey either. So, but So then we create these microplots. Now, the microplot systems are a food source, but that's not really what they're being used as. They are and they aren't. It's more of a transitional behavior tool than it is a food source, okay? Even though it's food, the idea is to not put this massive food source in there that they're going to use like an ag. And a lot of people think that way. You know, oh, I got to have a 3-acre, 4-acre plot. Well, how are you going to shoot across the 4-acre plot? You're not.
With a bow.
With a bow. I'm sorry. Anyway, so you go to the microplot system with the idea of you want a natural transition out of that thicker area to go to these microplots, which I call social, let's just call them I don't know. It'd be like going to the bar, okay? You're there to meet with your buddies, watch a game, find some women, whatever it is you do. That's kind of the way I look at that, okay? It's more of a drive-through. I want to get us through, we'll get a snack, but yet you're there to meet people is the biggest part of that, or a very big part of that. You know, you're still hungry, but that's a big part of it. Then when you're done, then you go home, I don't know, and maybe you have a big dinner, if you will. And that would be more of your ag, but that's at night or whatever the case might be. So these deer are coming out of this area. They're going to these social microplots, okay? They're doing it based off the behavior of the natural winds, okay? They're going to go that, they're going to travel these corridors because it's their instinct for security to travel the winds in their favor. So when you're putting these microplots in, make sure 2 things. One is, what's your dominant wind? What's an easy way for them to transition to that? And how can I set my stands up to hunt that entire microplot for the most part, or at least half of it, you know, or a third of it, whatever it is, and use those winds. When the winds come in, you use those winds strategically, not just for shooting the deer, but also for getting in and getting out without being detected. And that I can't, what would you say, JJ, is the percentage of importance on that one statement, getting in and getting out without being seen, from a whole big hunting perspective?
I mean, if you shoot your deer the first time in, it doesn't matter as much. But if you want longevity to success, then it's like the most important thing.
There you go. And I agree. And we treat it that way. Now, what does that do? Okay, think about this. What does that do? What it does is that, and this is last 5 years, it's been consistent for us. It's not only keeping the deer on our property, giving them more safety, more security, but it's also bringing in deer at levels at the late season that just would blow your mind. I mean, we can go out there and there's one in our IMAX field. We talk about that a little bit. It's not uncommon late season. Now that's a little bit of ag. Okay. So we do some bigger ag stuff. And that's what, 3?
That's 1.5.
1.5 acres. And we put a crop in there. We put beans in there when we can and corn. It's a rotation thing. So the farmer that farms our land just does that little chunk in there, in and out. And we have a couple of those on the property, or three of them, I think, or 4 of them maybe. Anyway, so basically it's part of that microplot system. So they work through, they hit the microplots, they hit the ag. But late season, because we don't put the gun pressure on them, and it's all around them. I mean, literally, I'll jump in my stand when I hear a gun go off sometimes, but they will stay on that property, and it brings in deer, and it's not uncommon to have, I don't know. I'm just going to knock on wood. I don't think I've hunted that place, our property, in 5 years without cursing myself and not seen a deer. Maybe once or twice. That's how effective it is. So setting up your property and your behavior and your strategies with microplots, with your hunting strategies, it's huge. It's huge.
Yeah, and got a couple different things I was thinking about throughout that
Go ahead.
discussion, but I don't know if I'm going to hit them all now. Forget. Microplots, a lot smaller than the destination. They can get eaten out a lot quicker. So they, like what you were saying, it could be just a dirt field at some point, especially after the season. Our plots only last so long because of our deer numbers, and that's why we're trying to take out some does. That's why you guys are going to go out and trying to shoot 10 does this weekend at a spot to try to take that pressure down a little bit. Because if you can't grow a food plot or micro plot because you have too many deer, then it doesn't, good anyway. Those green food sources are getting hit pretty hard. They're more bare if it's not enough for the deer population, and then the deer head into those big ag fields. What we have set up, if you can do this, if you can tack on, instead of planting ag yourself, if you can have the farmer just kind of paired in with his large planting and leave a little bit, takes the stress off of the portion that you're going to leave standing. Say it's a 10-acre field and he leaves you one. The deer are using all 11 acres throughout the season. He harvests 10. You still have a pretty good 1 acre standing. If you plant 1 acre of corn where there's no corn around, the deer are going to be using that 1 acre the entire season, and it's not going to last very long. So try to pair it in with something that's close by so it doesn't get hammered too hard. Seems like on our property too, and just really anywhere, almost you get new bucks. The properties can get better even after the season through the spring. Like you keep getting more deer if you have enough food. This is not a micro plot strategy. It's big ag and what's left throughout the winter.
And actually more than that, because you're putting your warm season grasses in. We're not talking about that. We're doing other things outside of that, water if you can. So it's more than just that. But go ahead.
Yeah, and then on our property, we have all that woody browse and good bedding next to the egg, and they're able to basically just stay real tight and eat that. I'm testing some stuff for in Wisconsin. I've left egg up before, 3/4, half acre, acre, and it just didn't feed the deer long enough. So This year I put in 1.5, or maybe it's more like a little over that in corn, and then I have a really nice primetime brassica plot right next to that turned out well with a little bit of clover. So I'm trying to almost plant more to see if I can last through the winter, because I've never had a good winter herd. We get such deep snow. We don't have a lot of thermal cover, a lot of good bedding.
We need more of that.
I'm trying to see if the egg can outweigh the lack of quality late season bedding. Try to keep some more deer in there, not only to remember it for next year, to find sheds, to just start getting them using the property because it is a good rut property. So just some different things. We're always learning. It's not like we have this system figured out, but I feel like a lot of times we'll get new bucks after the season closes here, which is December 31st. It happens almost every year. We get a new buck that wasn't there all year, comes, maybe sheds, maybe doesn't. He doesn't really show up until next year, December, January again. So it's always fun. It's kind of cool. Some seasons last through January, February, and people can capitalize and shoot those deer. We can't, because our season, the weather's just not harsh enough to bring in those bucks from 2 miles off at this point. So,
and a comment on, this last year was the first year that we really noticed about having to manage population for the first time ever. So we took 4 or 5 does off within our 200-300 acre area. And that includes the neighbors. And what I want to bring up is it can be, I'm going to just make the statement. I'm pretty sure it's pretty accurate, but I'm sure the majority of all you big buck hunters out there did not shoot your buck this year. That's just the way it is. You know what I mean? You are not going to shoot a big buck every year. We had a neighbor that managed with us that shot his first buck in 5 years? And he was really in on the management. He's seeing these deer. He's interacting with the system, the whole thing. And he just didn't, but he works, he's got a kid, all that kind of stuff. So happy for the guy, especially because it was a buck that kind of used his area more than any other of the areas. And we had some pretty good opportunities to get him, but he ended up getting him, and I'm super glad for him. But anyway, the point I'm trying to get is we're managing numbers now. And last year we took off those does. And what I did is I paid for it. And there's other ways where I think there's things where you can just donate the meat. But anyway, I took it to the food shelf. Now there's things hoops you got to go through and everything to make sure that it's not handled by, personal people. It's got to go to an actual USDA facility and go right from there to the warehouse, that kind of thing. But so this year we decided we're going to do it again, and we're kind of figuring out how many do we want to take off. But I saw on the news last year, and they were so tickled to get that protein at the food shelf because they don't get it. They get cans and all that, right? So they said last year they serviced 800 families in a community in this region, I would say is not more than 200,000 people. And the city itself is over 100,000, but the little towns around and whatnot, it's around 200,000 people. And they served 800 families. This year, they're servicing 10,000 families. So for you to go out and manage your property and shoot these does and give them to your food shelf, dude, that is such a big deal. And it's so fulfilling that you're having an impact on other people's lives in your community. It just makes you feel great. So that's a big thing. And that gets us excited about going doe hunting. Because now we're like, oh, I want to shoot that cotton-eyed Jane with a bad eye, and all that kind of stuff. And leave that one alone. She's got a lot of, what is that, white on her, So it gets a little exciting. It's fun.
Yeah, I mean, what better way to, go out, have fun. You get to go out and hunt and then still support people that are in need. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. So definitely recommend, if you're going out there shooting some does, managing your property, look that up. They have it pretty much everywhere. Look up the regulations, what you got to do, where you got to take them. But you can definitely make a huge difference, especially this time of year. Pretty cool to do that. One thing that I was thinking when it comes to late season, and I just saw this here in the last 2 weeks, and it's when these water holes begin to freeze. And it makes you think, and we haven't really talked about it too much this year, is the importance of water this time of year too, especially as water sources are freezing. I've seen a lot of deer going to ponds and pawing at them, trying to break ice. Going to creeks that are still open can be something to focus on too. Deer still going to drink, especially if there's no moisture, there's no snow. So finding those open sources of water can be another strategy on top of food when it comes to late season. And I want to make the point of, we always talk about a lot, food and apply it to where we're at here in Minnesota and snow. And, those theories, the foundation of them, I think that you can take them and apply them to wherever you're at. Now, your food sources may be different. Your temperatures may be different. But a lot of those strategies you can kind of apply to where you're hunting. Again, it could be woody browse. It could be, just a different type of food, but, pay attention to that food to bed, strategy. And also, what makes good late season hunting. We hinted around about it. You guys talked about it a little bit. Being able to match that with good cover, thermal cover. I mean, look at where you find sheds, during the spring. It's obviously food has a lot to do with it, but you can have food, not have any good bedding or thermal cover where deer can stay warm, and have that cover where they feel safe. That's a huge part of it too. So just a couple things to think about, outside of that food game for late season.
Yeah, I know. So I'm going to head out and try to take a doe. You're going to head out. You still got a couple target bucks potentially, and then you're going to do some doe management. What's your strategy on both of those two things?
Yeah. They're not too different, to be honest with you, until we get some snow, and then that'll change some things. But I'm a big believer this time of year that big bucks will show up where there are large numbers of deer. The largest numbers that I've seen happen to be on those green plots right now. So like clover plot, there's 20 some deer coming in there. The other brassica plot, which I talked about, there's 30 some deer coming in there. So obviously great opportunity to go in there and shoot some does. So that's the strategy there. Bucks, it's just, those bucks aren't every day by any means. But I think when they do show up, the best opportunity to capitalize them is around those big doe areas. So really picking those windows, playing the right wind. Again, access is huge. Just trying not to pressure them too much, trying to hunt them in those windows where I think that, hey, pressure's high, it's cold. I think a buck could show up tonight. So really the strategy isn't too different. Going to focus on those areas for now until we get snow. That'll change a little bit, but focusing on those green food plots.
What about, I know you got a couple different guys going out to shoot some does. You're going to do crossbows, keep it quiet. Is there a strategy on how you can get more people out shooting does? Stand locations. How do you do that when they're all condensed into a couple
shooting them,
spots?
killing them efficiently, and getting in and out efficiently.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. We haven't devised a full game plan for that yet, but I know there's going to be quite a few of them taken with a crossbow. I think that's a strategy. I think it's a pretty efficient way. I think it's quiet. I think
10 point.
Yeah, not only is it important to do it efficiently just from a kill standpoint, but I think that hunting with a crossbow like that, out there with the 10 points allows us to, first wave of does that comes out, we can shoot one. They may run off, but if we're not banging a gun out there, there's probably another wave that's going to come back. It may be another wave. So it lets us be efficient in that one day. If we're going to shoot 10 does, then we don't have to hunt 3 or 4 days to do it, where we're putting more pressure on. The least amount of pressure that we can put on the property and harvest that set number of deer, that's what we want to do. So I feel like crossbows are a great option for that. We may have a guy or two out there with a bow. Lance will probably hunt with a gun in one spot or another. So, kind of a mix of those things, but trying to be strategic on where we place those certain people and with those weapons, just to, again, try to be the most efficient that we can, with the least amount of intrusion, while still accomplishing the goal.
Yeah, another good tactic too, because we're trying to shoot a couple and not mess it, blow up the bedding too much. Hunt more of that perimeter where we got them coming out to the food. I could see, this is an ideal world, not that you can plan this necessarily, but if you did have some snow coming in, maybe there's 6 inches coming in, you could shoot some does or whatever right before that. Try to drag them out, especially on like a windy day. Just try to drag them out there quick, and then you get that big snowfall, cover up all that blood. Maybe that would help. Just try to keep it low key. Like we talked about, access. Our screens are not standing real tall, real proud, hard to get in and out. So we're not going to be diving right in the middle of the woods. You got some easier access to some spots where you park behind a little hill, you could call it, walk over that hill, dip into your blind, straight back out over the hill when you leave, things like that. So in and out. Try to be, take really
Perfect.
high percentage shots.
Perfect shots, yeah. Last year,
you don't want to be tracking far. So, I'm planning, if I can get a 15, 20-yard broadside shot where the deer's not moving, beating, like that's what I want.
Yeah, and I'm a expandable crossbow. Last year I took that one, and put the hit on it, got my gear put away, literally walked over. I don't know, she went 30, 40 yards, dragged her out right on the edge of the property, got out of there. It couldn't have took me more than 30 minutes to do the whole process, and it was still daylight.
Yeah.
So they didn't even know what happened.
Yeah, lots of good opportunities, late season, whether you're still after buck or after doe, make it fun, take advantage of it and take the opportunity to support maybe some people in need. Really important. Kind of a fun time of year, even though season's winding down, there's still a lot of strategy that can happen here in these last couple weeks. And we have, big things to look forward to in this coming year. Shed season, what deer made it, kind of that re-inventory pattern. And then, that preparation kind of starts for this next year already again. So lots of good stuff coming up. ATA show is right around the corner. You guys are headed there. Some really cool new products that are launching from the Illusion side, which is exciting. And then still videos rolling out. We just did an Art of Deer Hunting with JJ, talking about late season and talking about some other cool kind of unique things, some taxidermy stuff, checking out the new Skullmaster stuff. So give those a watch on the YouTube channel. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe. Definitely interact with us on social media. We're on there all the time. Would love to share your stuff and just interact with you and hear your stories. So appreciate you tuning in, and good luck out there the rest of the season.
The Deer Society podcast is brought to you by Illusion Hunting Systems, Onyx Hunt, Reveal Cellular Cameras, 10-Point Crossbows, Prime Archery, Loophole Optics, G5 Broadheads, Osseo Gear, Raw Frozen Scents, and HHA.